You're listening to The Secrets of Sacred Art, where we unearth the hidden treasures, history, and deeper meanings in religious and sacred art. We're your hosts, Alix Murray
and Kathryn Laffrey. Welcome to episode 27, The Queen and the Fisherman. In this episode, we'll explore the art and images of St. Andrew the Apostle and the saintly Queen Margaret of Scotland, and the impact they made on the country, and what happens when iconoclasm rears its ugly head. So please follow The Secrets of Sacred Art in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast app. For a fuller experience, you can join us on SQPN's YouTube channel, where you can see all the image we're discussing on the show. You can find us on social media at facebook.com/StarQuestMedia, on X at SQPN, or on Instagram at StarQuest Network.
Yeah. Now, before we
get a lot of good images to see, don't we?
Yes, yes. So please do take a look on our on the YouTube channel. Before we get started, I want to thank our secret arts sleuth, Kati. She did the lion's work on the research for this for me. And I mean, her help was so invaluable. It really was. So thank you, Kati. And yes. One of the things she said was, after reading so much about St. Margaret, she developed a real love for her. And she just wanted to learn more about St. Margaret. And I kind of hope we can inspire our viewers to do the same, to learn a little bit more about this extraordinary woman and an extraordinary saint, along with her companion here on our podcast today, St. Andrew. And I think, let's see if you want to bring up some images already, Kathryn. Jump right into it.
Let's jump right in. We have to say that St. Margaret's feast day, November 16th. So
yes, yeah.
I like always sending my mom a message. She's a Margaret, so I always wish her a happy feast day on St. Margaret's Day.
Oh, I know. And now, you know what? So we'll just, have this special one for her. This one's for you, Margaret.
Yeah.
Yeah. So first we want to start out with, sometimes we just assume people know things, and they might not know. And so who is St. Andrew? St. Andrew was one of the original apostles. And I think he wasn't considered a son of thunder. Did Jesus?
That's James and John.
James and John. Thank you. Yeah. So, but he was the brother of Simon Peter, and he was a fisherman, and he plied his craft on the Sea of Galilee, and he was believed to be martyred in Patre, Greece. My apologies if I'm not pronouncing that correctly. We'll have a really good link in the show notes from EWTN's website going into the details of his life and what we know from scripture and what we know that is tradition and other writings we know about his life. I thought it was really, really good. And so we'll have lots of show notes on this one. So again, we encourage everyone to take a look at those after watching us on the podcast today. But he was crucified in a particular way. He was crucified on what is called a saltire cross. And you can see it, he's holding it in this gorgeous rendering of St. Andrew by Carlo Crivelli. This is in the National Gallery, and I just love this.
The details are fabulous, and his beard and the pages.
Yeah, and the wood.
Fabulous.
Just everything. Oh, it's kind of like takes it to that next level of the reality beyond the reality, it's so beautiful and rich. The veins in his hands, everything is so
I'm quite shocked when I look at the date.
Yeah, 1476.
I would have thought this was a contemporary piece, like a modern piece.
I know.
It's very timeless. I mean,
it is.
Again, my favorite, when people can balance the symbolic with the real, you get just the fullness of everything. We are spirit and matter.
Exactly. And it is captured in this. And this is in the National Gallery, and it's from a huge altarpiece that has all kinds of saints in it, and from the apostles on. And unfortunately, it's not on display.
Oh.
So it's on their website, but it's absolutely, I absolutely love this image of him. And and he was, in the image next to him is the saltire cross, which is on the Scottish national flag. And there's actually a lot of archaeological evidence that people were crucified on these style of crosses, which, as if any style of cross and crucifixion would be better than the other, it's not. But it's so this was a way of torturing and murdering people, quite frankly. But the Scottish people have adopted St. Andrew's way to heaven as their national flag, and that's what we're looking at here.
Nice.
So, and I've got a couple of other really interesting images. Do you want to? Here we go. And now these are some more images of St. Andrew. He is much beloved in the country of Scotland. And the first image that we're looking at, I believe, is at St. Margaret's Chapel in Edinburgh.
Mm.
And take a look at the cross behind St. Andrew in this first picture. So he's got his saltire cross behind him, but above his head, like by the halo, you've got an angel, a bull, and a lion. Isn't that? And at the bottom of it, at the very bottom, you can see the eagle. So he's represented in this beautifully by the four Gospels. And then there's some kind of dragon or something. Kathryn, take a look at that dragon.
I am trying to figure that. I'm like, did he drop his fishing net and there's a squid in there? And
yeah.
Okay, I'm really.
It's some kind of creature. Yeah. And he's got his foot on it. So beautiful.
The reason why I thought about the fishing net is our cathedral here is St. Andrew's.
Okay.
And so I'm used to seeing St. Andrew with his, X-shaped cross, and ours even has a fishing net in his hand.
Yeah.
So it's kind of neat. You get that's why I'm thinking of fish when I see this dragon-y thing below him.
Yeah. Well, but the Celts love dragons as well. So the dragon plays such a huge role in I would say Celtic iconography. And of course you can look behind him, the beautifully rendered Celtic knotwork, just beautiful in that stained glass window. And these are all from Scotland. So these are images of Saint Andrew that have been thankfully preserved. And again, the one on the right is a statue. I think it's from, I could be wrong, I think it's from the 16th century, maybe 15th century.
Oh, wow.
But a little bit defaced, though. And this is the other thing. You've got to look really on some of this artwork that we're going to show you today. There's a lot of evidence of damage, and that's just to take note of what was going on. And we'll talk about why that happened as well, because I think that's very important. That part of it. So let's see, what else do we have? So this is interesting. So there's a legend that Saint Regulus, or also known as Saint Rule in Scotland, and he was the Bishop of Patre, and he dreamt that he was supposed to remove St. Andrew's relics from their resting place in the local monastery and relocate them elsewhere. And St. Rule and his companions set sail in faith, and they shipwrecked off the coast of Scotland near the village of Senrigmoned. Yes. Not an easy word for me to say.
No.
And that would eventually become St. Andrew's. Now, and here's an image. This is in Italy, and this is an image of Saint Regulus and his martyrdom. And I just think I think it's just a really lovely, it's depicting a really horrific scene, but it's done beautifully. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
And again, looking at, connecting the styles and the influences from one part of Christendom to another. And you can see with the draping of his robes and everything, very much you can see that kind of stuff in Celtic art, sacred art, Byzantine sacred art, just that beautiful draping. So, but actually, there seems to be a more plausible story about how St. Andrew's relics got to Scotland. So in the 8th century, St. Acca of Hexham probably brought them from Hexham Abbey, which you have seen, Kathryn. Even though having this discussion, I was like, oh my gosh, Kathryn, look at this. Don't you remember we had coffee there? And you're like, I don't remember.
Hey, you took me to a lot of churches in a short amount of time.
That's true. But this is in Hexham, and we go to Hexham all the time. I think it was an Augustinian monastery because it looks very different from the monastery on Lindisfarne, which was founded by the Benedictines. And of course, their styles are quite distinct. So Saint Acca was in Hexham, and here we've got his cross. And I just thought I wanted to show you this again, this connection between Scotland and the British Isles, the Irish monks, things that were happening down in England, and some people want to say there wasn't much of a connection, but there was, and we can see that. I guess you could see that by looking at documents and writings and things in history, but you can also see it most obviously, and I think most accessibly, through the visual arts. So this cross, now the arms of this cross are gone. It is contemporary with, so this is an 8th century cross, so it would be contemporary with a lot of Celtic crosses that we've seen. But interestingly, this one probably did not have those arches for support. Remember when we were talking about Iona, these crosses, even though they were made around the same time, not every Celtic cross is going to have those arches around it because for various reasons they didn't think they needed them, or they just, for aesthetic reasons they didn't do it. But anyway, so he probably brought them to St. Andrew's, or this this village, Cenrigmonade, which would become St. Andrews, when he was temporarily exiled from Northumbria. So there was a lot of stuff going on. And the relics of St. Andrews were thought to have been brought to England by St. Augustine in 597. And because before he arrived to the British Isles, he belonged to a monastery in Greece, I think it was in Greece, called St. Andrew's Monastery, which did have St. Andrew's relics. Okay. So that's kind of a little bit of chain of custody of these relics. And
it's
relics
fun to see the connection with those little islands in the north and Greece and other
and the
places.
Desert Fathers and oh yeah. Well, when we talk about Durham Cathedral, which is going to be coming up, the connection between I have a little surprise, little teaser. I can show you the connections between the Desert Fathers and the Celtic priests. Yeah, Celtic monks. Yeah, very cool connection. But the relics consist of a tooth, an arm bone, a kneecap, and 3 finger bones from St. Andrew. Yeah. And as I said, so the Scottish flag is, bears homage to St. Andrew with its saltire flag. And it is called a saltire flag. And I don't know if that's capitalized or not. And a great cathedral was built to house the relics in what is now known as the city of St. Andrews.
Wow.
So, yeah. Yeah.
Wait, this is St. Andrews where the golf course is?
It is. Yes.
Just show my lack of I just want to get all this into one image in my mind.
Yeah.
Going, okay.
I know. St. Andrews, also known as Little America.
Yes.
There's so many golfers from America that are there, and which was funny.
Obsession. Yeah.
I know. And why anybody would want to, I mean, it's stunningly beautiful. I have to say, it's just beautiful. But I really think you can go to St. Andrews to play golf, but I think you should maybe pay a visit to St. Andrew and St. Margaret before you hit the course.
Mm-hmm.
Just saying. Yeah. No, it's a beautiful place. And we walked on the golf courses when we were there, and I felt like I was, it's funny. So like when I'm walking around a museum or something, I feel quite like, oh, I'm walking, I know what I'm looking at, I know where I'm going, blah, blah, blah. And I'm able to appreciate things on a level that maybe not everybody else does, just because they haven't obsessively studied some of these things that you and I have studied. But when we were walking on the golf course in St. Andrews, I was like, oh, I'm definitely out of my league here. I have no ability to appreciate. I just felt like I should be appreciating this, but I'm just not.
No.
Yeah. And people just were walking. When people are trying to play golf, they're just walking around. I couldn't believe it.
It's a beautiful place.
It is.
I've never been there, but it's on the list.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, your hubby can play golf and you and I will go. Look at all
I'll be a caddy. I'd golf it there myself. I love golf. So
That's true. I was going to say we could go look at all the sacred art and stuff, because there's a lot. There's so much there. So much. So next,
more sacred art.
Yes, more sacred art. So here we go. Like, just take a look at some of these. So I found a website, again, in the show notes. This one is so cool. And this has 3D renderings of a lot of the, artifacts from around St. Andrews. Again, some of them were destroyed. So let's say, and they do it, it's like 3D, and you can just turn it around in all kinds of ways. You can zoom in, you can zoom out. It's really, really,
that's a good experience when museums let you look at something from all different sides like that. That's a great experience.
And again, this is actually one of the best websites I've seen that would allow you to do that. So I've pulled a couple of images from there, and this is an image of St. Andrews from the cathedral. And again, if you look at where the damage is, it's on his head, on his face. Obviously, this was something that had been destroyed. But what I also really liked about this is you can see the remnants of paint on this, kind of the yellow ochre and like some red. Really neat. What must that have looked like? But and even on his skin, you can see where he was, lots of coloring there on that one.
Wow. Yeah, that would have been neat to see all colored.
Yeah, and his beard, I think his beard is great. He kind of looks like Gandalf.
Now, you said Gandalf, and the first thing that came to mind for me was, oh my gosh, in the Pirates of the Caribbean.
Davy Jones.
Davy Jones.
Oh no.
Poor St. Andrew. Right away, I got to put you at that kind of a fisherman. No.
I know, no. So I'm thinking Gandalf. No. I'm thinking Gandalf because I'm watching Rings of Power. That's why. That's why he's on my mind. Yeah.
And then this. What is this?
Okay, so this, and we've got a couple of images from this, and so this one. This is called. This is a sarcophagus, and or the remnants of a sarcophagus. And it is Pictish. So these were designed by, so it's very, very, very old. And I couldn't find out. So it's called St. Andrew's sarcophagus. So I'm thinking, is this where the relics were? Maybe I couldn't find any evidence of it, but it might have been something that was retrofitted for the relics, and it was maybe intended for somebody of high status before. It's kind of a mystery. The front of it, if you look very closely, these are there's a hunting scene, but there's also an image of King David wrestling the lion. That's to the far right.
Yeah.
But if you look, there's a hunter on a horse and dogs attacking bears, and it's quite violent actually. Bears and wolves and stags and things like that. So I'm not quite sure. I don't know if it was made specifically for the relics of Saint Andrew, or if they had this really stunning sarcophagus and they thought, well, the saint has more status than whoever was in there. And not quite sure. But so this is on that website where you can just look at you can look at it in 3D. It's so neat. It's so neat. Nice. But take in the Celtic influence. This was made by the Picts, so this is a Pictish structure or rendering. And here you can see, I was thinking possibly the 5 wounds of Christ.
Interesting. It has that carpet page kind of feel, doesn't it?
Exactly. And look at the snakes at the lower left hand side wrapped around the sphere.
Golf ball?
Yeah, so we've got, seriously now, Kathryn.
I'm sorry, but I'm just saying what I see, folks.
There you go. Oh my gosh. But these are they could be the snakes, and I was kind of thinking about, what is the name of the snake in Norse mythology? He eats away at the roots of Yggdrasil. Is it Hogum? Something like that.
I don't know my Norse mythology.
Hogum or something. Anyway, I look it up. But again, it does really look a lot like the carpet pages. And, the beautiful Celtic knotwork, or I should say Pictish knotwork. And you can see the images of the people that kind of, sometimes in the Book of Kells, how you had these people tangled, their limbs were all tangled together and they were grabbing their beards and all this stuff. And you can see where that influence came from. And then I think there might be, I'm not sure if I have another one or not. No. Moving on to the next one. So that's a really quick and nice segue into the next saint that we're talking about, and that would be Saint Margaret. Now, Saint Margaret was born in exile in Hungary in 1045, and this is one of the reasons I asked Kati to help me with this research, because Kati is from Hungary, and I thought, she'll be able to access things that I won't, because she can read it and I can't. And it turns out there are lots of Saint Margarets. So when you're looking up Saint Margaret, make sure you put Saint Margaret of Scotland, because there's, I think Saint Martha is maybe a variation of Margaret, or Margaret is a variation of the name Martha. And so it could be Saint Martha from the New Testament. And then there's another Saint Margaret in Hungary where they have quite a devotion to her. And it turns out it's not this Saint Margaret, which surprised Kati as well. So again, it was something that she, we all learned quite a bit on this one. But she was an English princess. So her father was in line for the English throne. I believe her mother was Hungarian. And so when he went into exile, that's why they found refuge in Hungary. And this is just a little bit of her family tree. And she is the second one from the left. And she was one of 4 children. And I believe one of her sisters became a nun. And Her father was supposed to, because Edward the Confessor did not have any children, he made her father his heir. But then her father, so they were able to come back to England, but either on the way to England or right after they arrived, her father died. And they don't know how he died. Like, was it, was he poisoned? Was it just misfortune? And so, and that's when Harold the First kind of stepped in, and then he was defeated by William the Conqueror. So that does get a little bit complicated. But so she immediately became an exile again. And when she was, I guess, maybe heading to France, heading back to Hungary, once, her father had died, her ship ran aground off the coast of Scotland. And maybe we can look at the next slide. And it ran aground in what is now called St. Margaret's Hope. And it's so funny. So we have to let everyone know. So when we were doing this, because I know you love maps, Kathryn, and I was like, all pleased that, found this map, and I found Margaret's Hope. And you were like, can you, maybe put it in context more, globally?
Global
and
context.
And I'm like, I thought it was because it's not far from the Orkneys. I mean, it's way up in Scotland, and it's right across from some place called, I love this dwarfy Stane.
Oh yeah.
I'm like, what is that? I think Stane is like a fortress or something. But anyway, it's way up north. And just to give you an idea, we have this smaller map of the British Isles, and you can see where St. Margaret's Hope is in comparison to every place else in Britain. So it's way, way up there.
Yes, much farther north than I thought when I saw just the image of the islands.
Yeah. See, and of course, I have to say, my bad, because I'm obsessed with the Orkney Islands anyway. And so when I saw that the Orkney Fossil and Heritage Center was there, I thought, okay, that's way up there. So, but her ship ran aground, and King Malcolm III of Scotland sailed out to meet her and to give her assistance because, she was royalty and he was royalty. Mm-hmm. He had been exiled himself as a young prince. And so I think he had some sympathy for her. Mm-hmm. And he was a widow, and he had 2 small children. And St. Margaret was a beautiful young princess in a little bit of a predicament. So,
damsel in distress, as it were.
A little bit, yeah. And he was quite taken by her, and I think, a little bit sympathetic. And also, from a political perspective, it probably really was in his best interest to marry someone who was still in that Anglo-Saxon line. As the Normans were starting to become more of a threat, I think he wanted to just solidify his legitimacy. If there was any question, I don't know how much of a question there was, but anyway, so they married. I think he was about 14 years older than she was, maybe.
Okay.
And so let's take a look at the next slide. Mm-hmm. And here's a surprise. Yes. Okay. So you go ahead and let's talk about this, and then we'll go back to Margaret and St. Margaret and Malcolm.
Yeah, so circling back to another island that we've discussed way back in the beginning of all these episodes was on Lindisfarne, as we were going from one building to the next, and it happened into St. Mary's. And they say it's one of the oldest churches, or the oldest church.
Probably one of the oldest churches in England, yeah.
Well, it's still in use too, which is beautiful.
It is.
And I believe you and I and the girls said the Angelus when we were in there.
We did.
Yes.
Yeah.
So taking back a little Catholicism there. But anyway.
Yes, exactly.
But so because with my recent fascination with embroidery work and now my job, I saw this beautiful standard of St. Margaret of Scotland, and because of my mom, wanted to take a nice picture of her. And yeah, she's just kind of, they just have it leaning up against the wall. I really wish that it had a stand so that it would hang a little straighter and give her a little love. But you can tell from this image that she was definitely beloved queen and beautiful.
Yeah.
And,
absolutely.
And,
you know,
she that fairy princess look. Yeah.
She did. And also she really did have ginger hair. So,
nice.
Her relics at one point showed that she had ginger hair.
Yeah. And then also in the embroidery is this little abbey that you'll see in the third picture over. And the abbey, Alix, you got to pronounce it for me again.
Dunfermline.
There you go.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
And look at that abbey is not it's in ruins now, or?
It is. Oh, don't give away the whole thing. But
I'm sorry.
Like 500-year spoiler alert.
Sorry.
No, that's okay.
So we do, gosh. Read your history, folks, and then watch
exactly.
The show.
Yeah, there you go. No, but yes. So this was some. There's a connection between St. Margaret and Dunfermline Abbey, but one of the things, as you were talking about this image, this was so beautiful. When we went to this church, oh my gosh, the connections between Scandinavia and Scotland, Ireland, England, it was just all in this one little church. And then you had this beautiful, beautiful banner, hand embroidered, probably by if it was hand embroidered by someone of incredible skill.
Yes.
And it looks very Scandinavian. It looks very Scottish, it's just gorgeous.
The variety of stitches used on this one piece
and techniques.
Incredible. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you know what? I've got to get back to that place.
Yeah.
I mean, it's too late now. Lindisfarne is closed. Lindisfarne is closed down now.
Oh, closed for the season?
Yeah. Yeah. Because trust me, I'm not going out there this time of year. No way. I was afraid in May of getting swept away. But so I'm just going to have to get out there in the springtime, talk to somebody about her. Maybe we can do a follow-up. If I can get out there and talk to somebody about it, do a follow-up and go from there. But beautiful. And even using the images of the peacock, which is a sign of immortality. Beautiful, beautiful lady. Yeah. Yeah,
lovely.
So back to her when she was just meeting Malcolm the Third. Actually, I think they had met before, but this first image, I just found this. It's lovely. It's from St. Margaret's Chapel in Edinburgh. It's just an image of Malcolm and first, greeting her when she gets off of her ship after being shipwrecked. She looks really amazing for someone who's just been in a shipwreck. But
we all look like that, Alix, when we're out on the boat and
exactly
by the waves. Yeah.
exactly. Terrified for our lives. But and I think his last name was Canmore, which means big head, which I think is really funny. Or as my husband would say, Colmbagheed. He had a big bonce. So that's what Malcolm Canmore, but I probably wouldn't call him that to his face. He was quite the warrior. He really was. And she was literate. She was very literate, very well. She was very refined. And Malcolm, not so much. Things were kind of rough in Scotland at the time. They had lots of King Canute, I think, had made some headway up there. And of course, the clans are always fighting, if I'm going to be honest. Oh. Yeah. So, there was a lot of instability there. So he was a warrior, but he was not literate. But it's said that he loved for her to read the Gospels to him. Yeah. Among other things. And in this other little image. Now, it's not sacred art. I mean, neither one of these are sacred art. These are just kind of, shall we call them, peripheral art. It's telling the stories of people. And let me see if I can read it. It said, the explaining of the scriptures by Queen Margaret to the manly Malcolm Canmore was more than loving and it was a more than loving and pious act. It was the beginning of a needed reformation.
Oh.
And Scotland at the time did need a little bit of reformation. And she was very much instrumental in that. So they were kind of drifting a little bit. But again, it's because there was just a lot of instability there.
Mm-hmm.
And so she...
it's nice in that image, the calming influence you see.
Yeah.
With her hand gently on top of his, and his is in a fist. So you kind of can see that. Yeah. There's that. Okay, how are we going to move forward? Exactly.
And his big hunting dog is there just at his feet, sleeping, And so she was very much a positive influence in his life, and they really loved each other. They had 8 children, and I think six boys and 2 girls, and 4 of their boys were all kings of Scotland.
Wow.
Yeah. So, the fact that they went through 4 boys as kings, I don't know if that tells you the level of
violence,
upheaval. Yeah. And so she reintroduced the practice of fasting for Lent and Advent, as well as some liturgical reforms that needed to happen at the time. Yeah. And okay, we go. So she also had a tremendous love for the poor. And it said that she would wash their feet and tend to them before she did anything, before she had her breakfast or anything in the morning. She was known for love of the poor, lots of compassion. And she worked very hard for her people. And I wonder if she didn't have that compassion. I wonder if that was kind of born out of her own exile. There's a certain poverty, I don't care how much money or status you have, but if you don't have a home, there's a certain amount of poverty that's connected with that. So I wonder if that's what kind of gave her that compassion for them. And she did a lot. She did a lot for the poor. And I guess if we can, so now this
chapel, where is it located?
This is in Edinburgh, and this is St. Margaret's Chapel.
Okay.
It's really tiny. It's really tiny. It is. Although, do you know what? It's all painted white now, but I bet it wasn't white in the beginning, because there's no evidence that they liked things to be stark and white.
Yeah.
Celts Celts really liked color, and the Picts certainly liked color.
Yeah.
Because that's where the word picture comes from. So yes, they did like designs and color. But this is an image of Saint Margaret from her chapel, which is, but the one above the altar in the little picture that we have, the second middle picture, I think that's St. Andrew. So remember the first pictures at the first slide of St. Andrew that we saw?
Okay.
They're from the same chapel.
The stained glass in the same chapel.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, seeing this coming together here, Alix.
I know. And so this chapel, it kind of looks like it's out in the middle, like it looks like it's just out on the windswept, heathered mountains, but it's not. It's smack in the middle of Edinburgh.
Was it part of a larger structure at one time, or was it always just this little building?
It's always been that small. It's it's on the grounds of the castle. So if you go into the castle, which is really amazing, actually, it's so cool. This is part of, like, as you're walking around, you can walk to the chapel.
Well, just taking a closer look at those arches. Wow, they look familiar.
They do, yes. And thank you. Well spotted. Well spotted, because what we know now about these arches is this chevron design is something that seems to be a favorite of the Benedictines. And Kathryn, you looked something up about, like, what this chevron pattern kind of meant. I mean, it's been around.
It had a tie-in with like strength and loyalty. I'm going to have to look it up.
And support, yeah. Strength, loyalty, support, that sort of thing, which all makes sense when you think about the Benedictine rule. So,
and we'll definitely deep dive when we talk about Durham, because those chevrons are there too.
They're everywhere. And, and so this is something, if people are maybe on, touring Europe or going to a museum, where, you'll see some of these things sadly in museums because, for various reasons. But if you come across something like this, and it's Gothic or it's from, early Christianity, and if you see those chevrons, you need to start thinking, I wonder if that's Benedictine, because that's how I've been able to spot. Like, I don't need to read the little guidebook. I can go up, and I do check myself with the guidebook, to be fair. But I'm discovering now, like, I don't even need to read the guidebook anymore. I can go in here and go, okay, this is a Benedictine monastery. This is an Augustinian monastery. And it's because that's the information that the building itself is giving you. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you want to move on to another one? Yes. So this was so cool. Kati found this for me. So amazing. So Saint Margaret had her own little gospel book that she would read from. She would sit, read this to her husband. And this is Saint Margaret's gospel. And I just pulled, this is from the Gospel of Saint Luke. And this is at the Bodleian Library now down in Oxford.
So this is an image from her gospel that she read from.
This is, they have the gospel that belonged to Saint Margaret.
Oh, wow.
I know. And I just wanted to show everyone, again, the connection. I think this one was probably made for her. So this was made in the 11th century. So this is, you're going 3 centuries after the Book of Kells, but you can still see the influence and you can read it. I think, the words are starting to, they don't have there's not as much of the abstract designs in the image. I think it's becoming a little more text dependent, if that makes any sense. But just take a look at this. How very beautiful nice. It is. Yeah. And it looks like, I guess that's a scroll in front of him. Yeah.
It reminds me of that image of St. Matthew we looked at in our previous episode.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the same movement to the robes.
Yeah, and the chair and and even the cushions behind where he's sitting. But so they were aware of these things. She was coming from the continent, Hungary, moving to the British Isles, but there was a connection between those places. It wasn't as if there was some big break and schism that I think a lot of people want to argue, especially when you start talking about the Irish monks and the Celtic Catholics. I'm just going to call them that. How about that?
There was never a wall around the British Isles. That's always been connected to the rest of the world.
Exactly. Yes. The water is those were like highways, not barriers, definitely highways. So as the British Empire proved centuries later. Yeah. So this is another page from her gospel. And again, now this one is from the book of the book of Matthew, and it's the Liber Generationis page. Yeah. And again, if we go back to some of our previous podcasts where we've shown this page in the Insular Gospels, I would say the L is starting to become less of a piece of art, and more it's starting to turn into the letter L.
Yeah.
But again, we can still see the connections here. There was an absolute connection.
Oh, yeah. What is this?
I looked at, I actually think this is, sorry, Kathryn, I really think this is probably an AI rendered image. I couldn't find any information. This is going to sound so bad. Like if I can't find like who made this, I just figure it's AI. But
I'd probably agree looking at the way everything's positioned.
Yeah. It's a little too perfect, isn't it?
Yes.
But and nobody's like looking at us. But so one of the greatest acts of charity that Saint Margaret performed for the people of Scotland is that she and actually really for pilgrims all over the world, Christendom, because this was a major, because St. Andrew's relics were at this cathedral. Mm-hmm. First of all, this was at the time when it was built, it was the largest cathedral in the world.
Wow.
And it was a major pilgrimage site, just like Rome, the Holy Land. So she set up a ferry system that would allow pilgrims to come to St. Andrew's free of charge. And that ferry system, so there were two ferries, the North Ferry and the South Ferry, and they're called Queen's Ferry North and Queen's Ferry South. And the ferries, as I said, they were free for everyone. And these ferry crossings, now get this, these ferry crossings operated from the 11th century until 1964.
I hope not with the same boats.
Yeah, maybe they used the P&O ferries. But I mean, think about that. She set this up in the 11th century and it was running until 1964. There are very few people who, you can't say that about too many things in this world.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
That's impressive. That's very impressive. And so I wasn't able to find, and also she established a similar ferry system out to Iona because she worked and again, this is something, when I was reading it, there were some arguments like, oh, well, this is, she's bringing in the Roman practice, the Roman Catholic Church, and she really didn't want to have anything to do with the Celtic Irish monks or anything like that. And that is not true. She set up a ferry system, a free ferry system to Iona, which had been ravaged by Vikings, by the raiding. Mm-hmm. But once that had calmed down, she had invested a lot in trying to reestablish pilgrimages out to Iona to venerate, for St. Columba and that sort of thing. So there's no evidence that, I guess if you could say, if you want evidence, it's put your money where your mouth is. Well, she that's what she was doing. So there's no evidence that she was rejecting or there was some kind of separation between the Celtic Church and the Catholic Church. There wasn't.
Right.
And the more we go over this, the more we, you and I have been delving into this, the evidence is so blatant. And especially, I think some of the strongest evidence is the art, which is why we love it. Yeah. So I wasn't able to find any images of any of the ferries, weirdly, but I did find a picture of the new bridge that was built in 1964. So this is it. This is Queen's Ferry Bridge North. So you can see, you can get an idea of the task these ferries had getting people here. So anyway. And do you know what? I'm embarrassed to say, I think I drove across that bridge and didn't even
realize.
I just didn't even register. Yeah, I didn't know what I was doing. I was just, I don't know.
Yeah, roads become familiar and then we forget. Oh, wait, this is, like when you took me on the roads through the countryside and went, oh, it's a straight road. It's a Roman road. And it's like, oh, it's kind of weird to think about. This road's been here that long.
Yeah. And some of the windy roads have been there even longer.
Yeah. Surprisingly.
Exactly. Some of them that say, oh, it's fun driving around the roads here.
Yeah.
Yeah, says she. Okay. So one of the other things that she did is she established the Benedictine monastery in Dunfermline. which is what we saw a little
There it
image of
is.
that on that beautiful banner. And it was a priory when she established it, but then her son David the First raised it to the status of an abbey in 1128, and it became the resting place for Scottish kings and queens for centuries, including Robert the Bruce. Do you know who Robert the Bruce is?
Nope.
Oh my gosh. Okay, you got to go back and watch Braveheart. Although in Braveheart, my husband was like, oh, they really have made him look like a nice guy. He wasn't a very nice man. Do you know what? It was brutal. I mean, in Scotland, it was, I don't know why, but they were fighters. They fought amongst themselves, and they fought other people. They were always fighting. And Robert the Bruce, infamously, you could run into a church and take sanctuary.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, one of his enemies ran into a church to take sanctuary from him. And he went into the church and he dragged him out and killed him. Now, he wasn't supposed to do that. Yeah, he was
the rules.
He was brutal. But he was, a very famous king of Scotland. I'm sure a lot of people know about him. And, but so he was buried there along with, kings and queens of Scotland. And, St. Margaret died not too long, literally like 4 days after her husband and her son were killed. So they went off to kind of sort out an altercation. So they went, somebody was kicking up a fuss somewhere. So they went out to kind of take care of it. And both of them were killed. And when she found out that they were killed, she was already not well. And she just, she died of a broken heart, I think. And, and she was canonized in 1250 by Pope Innocent IV, and her body was interred in this abbey, as I said. And she is one of the patron saints of Scotland, and she's also the patron saint of childbirth. So, because Mary, Queen of Scots, when she was giving birth to one of her children, I guess she was having a really difficult time. And as you do, you request that the head of the saint, who was also a queen, be brought to your bedchambers. And and she gave birth safely, and the baby was healthy and everything. So she attributed her successful birth and healthy baby to the prayers of St. Margaret. So that's how St. Margaret became the patron saint of childbirth. And I had mentioned that she definitely had red hair because on her skull there was still some remnants of her hair, and it was ginger.
Wow.
Yeah. So there you go. So that's a little bit of the history, and then what happened next. So what happened next was, now harken back to that rendering by AI of St. Andrew's Cathedral.
All right, wait, let's go look at it real quick.
Okay. Look at it. There we go. So this was the before.
That's the before.
And in 1559, John Knox, the reformer, gave a very zealous and hate-filled sermon on idol worship in the Catholic Church. And members of his congregation got so fired up, they rushed to St. Andrew's Cathedral and they ransacked it. They burned and smashed everything. And St. Andrew and St. Margaret's relics were desecrated, and it was thought that they were lost forever. So if you look at this is what it looks like today.
Wow.
This was the largest Gothic cathedral in the world. This was a major pilgrimage site. It was a major center of culture for Europe, not just the British Isles, but for Europe. The poor were looked after, cared for. There was a real presence here. And this is what it looks like now. And this is what I wanted to talk about, get a little bit on my soapbox here about iconoclasm. It is so destructive.
Yes.
There's nothing good that comes from it. Nothing. This was not only a destruction of something holy and sacred, but it was also the destruction of a culture.
Mm-hmm.
It's really sad. Really sad.
Wow.
Yeah. Now, their shrines were destroyed, and the cathedral obviously never recovered, clearly never recovered. And, yeah, so I guess if we can go to the next image, see what's coming up. This is the Benedictine monastery where she was buried along with the other and this is the thing with the Scottish kings and queens. Robert the Bruce's body was lost. They don't know where it is. Fortunately for St. Mark.
This is the Abbey now.
This was the Abbey. Yeah. This is what it looks like today.
Oh.
Yeah.
And they lost all of the bodies of the previous kings and queens?
Utterly destroyed. Yeah. And I mean, look at that window. Can you imagine with the stained glass windows? Yeah. And they did have, and these were hospitals and schools and libraries. I'm looking at, I keep bringing Rings of Power up only because this past season has been actually really good. But there's this scene where the orcs were just burning everything. And a very young Elrond says, "Oh, don't burn this because this is all of the knowledge that the elves have had, in Lindor or wherever they were. And these cannot be replaced." And this orc just kind of looks at him and laughs and just throws this, this precious scroll onto the fire. And this is real. This happened. This really happened. And it's not like it's better without it. I remember hearing a British historian, Mary Beard. She's quite famous, and she had a series on the BBC, and she was saying, she was talking about, she was in a Gothic church, and all the windows, the medieval stained glass windows had been smashed. And she said, and they've been replaced just with clear windows now. And she said, "Oh, I think, the stained glass windows were smashed, but I think these plain glass windows like open this up, and it's more beautiful now than I'm sure it was before." And I thought, no.
Yeah.
That's like saying somebody who's been assaulted that they look better with the bruises and cuts on their face.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? No.
Yeah. Or the Band-Aid over the scar.
Yeah. Oh, that's so much nicer. Yeah. You look better now. It's a shocking thing to say. But thankfully, here's another image. This was taken by my husband, my poor husband. He's always taking pictures for me. Again, the psychological warfare that goes on with iconoclasm. This is clearly, so when I sent this to you, why don't you tell our viewers what you texted back to me?
All I said was like, why would they erase St. Andrew?
Yeah.
I mean, they didn't erase, is that supposed to be Paul over there?
There's Paul, Peter? And then there's Peter on the other side. Yeah.
Yeah. But St. Andrew, I guess he doesn't count.
Yeah.
The poor guy, he was such the good big brother to St. Peter.
Yeah.
And such a good apostle to Christ. And yeah, he wasn't the one who always got to get pulled off to go see the special events.
Yeah.
He wasn't the one to go with Peter, James, and John for the transfiguration, but Andrew has been there steady since the beginning, and then you take him off the wall. Come on.
And I think this is because, when you say, doesn't he matter? I think he mattered so much. That's why they removed him. And again, when you're looking at some of this pre-Reformation art, sacred art, pay attention to what has been removed. So whoever went in here to desecrate this holy place, they were okay with Peter. They were okay with Paul. Andrew had to go. There was too much of a connection with the identity of the Scottish people and the saint. And that's why he had to go. Yeah. It's
surprised they let the golf course still be called St. Andrews.
I know. Well, yeah, because everybody wants to go. Well, I think they kept the name because nobody can pronounce the old name. But so this is actually an artist's rendering of Saint Margaret's shrine that had been visited by thousands of pilgrims. She was so beloved, and they were in search of hope and healing, miracles, and so this is what they think it might have looked like, and it was inside. Mm-hmm. And if you want to go to the next image, and this is what it looks like today.
Oh, just the pedestal,
and it's outside. It's not even inside anymore.
Wow. And
her shrine is gone. Now, what's interesting about this stone, and you can't see it in this picture. Donald tried to get so many pictures of it, but it just didn't work out. But it's actually called Queen's Marble. I think that's what the right name is. And it's actually fossilized sea creatures. And it was just reserved for and it was just reserved for like royalty. Mm-hmm. And so that's what this is. So they had found some fossilized, sea creatures. And it kind of reminded me of the Pisaki stones? Remember you and Daniel Mitsui were talking about it?
Petoskey.
Petoskey stones. Yeah.
Actually, in Michigan. So there's the Petoskey stone, which is fossilized coral, just by itself.
That's what this is.
But then there's another set of fossilized seabed from when Lake Michigan was once part of the Gulf of Mexico. The sea had spread that far north. And so that fossilized stone, and I forget the name of it, beautiful, deep black stone, and they're just filled with sea fossils. Okay. You have all kinds of that is actually used in the floor of our state capitol in Michigan. Okay. Gorgeous.
Yeah.
All polished up, and you can still pick up rocks along the beach and still find it. Yeah. But yeah, very beautiful.
I'm sure this was polished. I'm sure this was highly polished, but I think it must be like the Petoskey stones, fossilized coral for her. And that's what her shrine was sitting on top of. So that's kind of a neat little connection, isn't it? Mm-hmm. But now this is what it is. This is all that's left. But thankfully,
historically, is she still the beloved Queen of Scotland?
I think she is.
Is she still celebrated in history in Scotland?
She is, but do you know what? It's really tricky because, there's a lot of, I don't know, what am I going to call it? There's a lot of anti-Catholicism still there. There really is. It's amazing. And because the church wasn't restored in Scotland until the 1870s. So they had a long time without it. Okay. And I hate to say this. I mean, John Knox was a really miserable human being. I'm sorry. Reading some of his stuff, for goodness sakes. He was, and so you do have that. It's really uncomfortable. It's really, the meanderings that one has to make in order to justify and explain things is really hard. But I do think she is definitely recognized as a beloved Queen of Scotland and what she's done and what she did. But then it gets a little uncomfortable,
Yeah. It just makes me think back to when I was looking at that beautiful embroidered standard in the church. And I'm thinking, okay, as I look closer at it, it's like, this looks like it needs a good cleaning. And like I said, can it be in a stand, honored a little more? But it just kind of leans against the wall, and it made me feel a little sad, like, like someone forgot this beautiful treasure.
Yeah, yeah. This beautiful, beautiful queen who loved the church, loved her husband, her family, and she loved the poor. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. She'd be a good patron for catechists too. I mean, reading the Bible.
Yes, exactly. And wives. Do you know wives of wives maybe of husbands who haven't converted?
Yeah.
Exactly. But thankfully, John Knox and his boys didn't destroy the relics of the two most beloved saints in Scotland. They were smuggled out of the country, and they stayed at Douai Abbey in France until that, as a place of refuge, until that place was destroyed during the French Revolution. And that's a whole other thing. We think the English Reformation was destructive. It doesn't hold a candle, sadly, to the French Revolution. Mm-hmm. St. Margaret's relics were returned in the 19th century to the country, and the Spanish had been her faithful custodians until she could be returned safely. So somehow they got the relics to Spain. Yeah. And through a very circuitous path, now both of the saints rest in the Cathedral of St. Mary's in Edinburgh and St. Margaret's Church in Dunfermline. And here you can see the relics of Saint Margaret and Saint Andrew. And like I said, Saint Andrew is, he's the one to the far right, and you can see the different relics of his. And and then the top one, I'm just looking at the top one, it's her shoulder blade or her scapular that has been reserved. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And then the image just at the bottom. So this is why I kind of got the whole idea. There's a church in St. Andrews called St. James. Long story about that, but and the priest there, Father David, when they were what do you call it when they move the relics? Is it they transfer?
I think so.
I thought it was something. I thought it was like a fancy word, but anyway,
I don't know. There's probably always a fancy word in Catholic speak.
Of course, there is, and it's always, and there's a Latin one as well. And so when they were moving her relics, he was there for the big move from one reliquary to the new one, and he noticed there was like a tiny little piece that was still in there, and he goes, "I want that." And so he was given permission to take that relic, which you can see in the bottom left-hand image. And so now he has that in St. Andrews. And he also has a very tiny relic of St. Andrew. And he said, and so now they're together. They were separated by 1,000 years, but now they're together in St. Andrews. And I love that. I love that. So I'm
glad this had a happy ending.
I know.
All that destruction was bringing me down, Alix.
I know. But you know what? This is what happens. This is why, we have to pay attention to iconoclasm, because it is so dangerous. And one of the things that I'm always reminded of is if you can easily destroy an image of a human being, it's just one step to destroy the human being. This is why it's so important not to do these things.
Yes.
And especially sacred art. And so I do like that they're together. And now if you are going to St. Andrews to play golf, you have no excuse. You can go to St. James and you can pay honor to St. Margaret and St. Andrew before you hit the course, the green, whatever. The links. Thank you. I don't know, whatever. Before you swing the bat.
Not taking you golfing.
No, I'll sit on the seawall and watch you with with a nice pint in my, or glass of wine. Yeah. If it's not raining.
Oh, yeah. So, just like all of these beautiful works of art took patrons, we'd like to thank our patrons and who make the Secrets of Sacred Art possible, including Blair N., Sarah S., Patrick M., Dawn B., and Jonathan S. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue the Secrets of Sacred Art and all the shows at StarQuest. You can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. And thank you for listening to the Secrets of Sacred Art on StarQuest. To find previous episodes of StarQuest, or just StarQuest, Secrets of Sacred Art on StarQuest.
Yeah,
there we go.
Exactly. You'll get it.
Yeah, we'll get it. Yeah, and send us feedback. You can visit us at sqpn.com/sacredart. Send us email at sacredart@sqpn.com or by leaving us a comment on YouTube. And join us in the conversation by visiting Secrets of Sacred Art channel on StarQuest, Discord's community, our StarQuest Discord community. I'm doing fine, folks. And yeah, we're on sqpn.com/Discord. Good conversations going on there. And we love it when people post their little Secrets of Sacred Art finds.
Absolutely. Yeah. So please join us there. And we're going to be back next time when we're going to be discussing Celtic crosses, untangling the mystery. Until then, I'm your host, Alix Murray.
And I'm Kathryn Laffrey, hoping you find something beautiful.
Bye-bye.